in the agricultural field. So make sure you grab that on the way out. The next one is something that we were just handed yesterday, and we don't know all the details. It is from the Small Business Administration, and it details some of the impact of the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. And if your business is affected by that, there is money available through the Small Business Administration. So please grab those on the table as you exit. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Daryl Becker just to say thank you. This all started because of a literal coffee with Daryl. It took an hour for us to talk. I got to say about 4 words, and Daryl got to talk the rest of the time. So, and again, the concept here is we're going to listen to the farmers. We need your input. We need to understand how the things that we do impact you so that we can help you grow. So along those lines, one of the things that the Fayette County is going to do, we're going to make an announcement right now, in conjunction with the Farm Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce. We are going to begin working on a comprehensive buy local agriculture edition. This is going to be an app and a website, and it will help Fayette County residents. This is designed for Fayette County residents to use so that they know where and how to source our produce, our meat, our dairy, and everything else that we produce here, even value-added products. If you make pickles out of cucumbers, we're going to do that as well. So along those lines, Muriel is here from the Chamber. We're going to need some volunteer support for that in our data gathering. But this year, hopefully within 6 to 8 months, I was told I was allowed to say that, 6 to 8 months that would be available to the public so that we can start educating the public on how to buy more product locally. The more money that is spent here in Fayette County, it starts revolving. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do from the county end. So with that, I wanted to give Secretary Redding a little flavor of what this meeting is about, and so we invited Penn State Extension agronomist. Did I say that right, Justin? Yeah. Ah, okay. And I don't know what that means, but his name is Justin Breckenrich, and I would like to invite him up. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
All right, good morning. I thought about, when I started this, putting a pesticide slide up here, but then I thought you'd all get your donuts and go to sleep for 2 hours. And so I thought a little differently. It's really an honor to be here. A lot of you I've worked with some as I've transitioned to this role, but how I got to this spot is I've been with Penn State for 6, 7 years. And April of 23 was when I started my transition to working in Fayette County. Prior to that, I was in Butler, kind of worked on that 422 corridor. And now I'm predominantly working in Fayette, Greene, and Washington counties. And so I've been on this kind of exploratory research tour of what I can do to better assimilate myself into Western Pennsylvania, Southern Western Pennsylvania's agriculture, how I can help you. But I also want you to know what I am, right? Who I am, because this is a big ask that I let you call me, I invite you, or you invite me out, and we have this discussion and you trust me for answers. So we're going to start with who is this guy? In 2015 to 17, I was at WVU, right? I grew up in West Virginia, so this was a big transition for me to get closer to home. I worked for WVU Extension, Plant and Soil Science Department there. 2017 is when I went to Butler, and recently I moved down here. My home base is actually in Waynesburg, but I will tell you I live in Masontown, so it's kind of a nice hybrid of working in this area, but being across the line and being able to cover all of the areas that I have to do. And I'll tell Commissioner, no one knows what an agronomist is, so every time I meet someone, if you don't have one, you don't know what it is. And what I do is I work in corn, beans, small grain, forages, and cover crops, and the soils and the environment and the things that relate to those. But the biggest thing I want you to remember is I'm free, right? Like, you don't have to pay if you want to call me. If I come out to your farm, they say free advice is often not good advice. I'd like to think better of myself than that. But this is a resource that anyone in the community can use. But if you have a question that's not related to those things, right? If you've got tomatoes, or if you have fruit trees, or if you have livestock, think of me as a conduit to someone else. Penn State has taken this model that allows me to be very good at this kind of small area of things, the beans, the corn, the other crops. But we have other people that are good at water, good at livestock, good at things that service this area that I can help connect you with if we need help. So what does that look like, right? If you've got weeds, or if you need to think about what your herbicide program might be, or other IPM, other integrated pest management practices, that's where I can come in. If you're interpreting soil tests or fertilizers, forages, right? Right now, hay and understanding forage analysis, what we're feeding our livestock, is kind of the front runner of beef and dairy nutrition, is how we kind of digest that information and make something out of it. My background is in animal nutrition. My other life is soil chemistry, so if you think this is boring, invite me to talk about soil chemistry and you'll really be stunned. But we can really dig into a lot of what that means and how we can do better feeding our livestock and maximizing on the feedstuffs that we have available. Insect and disease diagnostics. So every person in Pennsylvania has the option to use our diagnostic lab, right? It's a free service. Doesn't matter if it's tomatoes or roses or corn. If you see a disease on something, you can put it in an envelope or a paper bag with a little bit of information, send it to our diagnostic clinic, and they're going to tell you if that's viral or bacterial or abiotic or what that may be. And you can treat that, right? This is a funded thing that anyone can use for anything there is. Let me help you get use of these things. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we can answer your questions. That's what my job is, putting the pieces of the puzzles together and helping us answer questions. So what am I doing, right? It sounds like I'm maybe not doing a whole lot, and I kind of joke that right now with it's raining, I'm really not, writing a bunch of papers. But we do a lot of work funded by soybeans. And anybody that grows soybeans knows that there's something called a soybean checkoff. And as if you pay, as you deposit your beans, you sell those, they take a % of that, and that goes to fund research. And across the state, there are a bunch of people like me, and we do a lot of work. And what we're doing down here is monitoring what we see for disease and insect. Every week I go out, I've got a lot of nice farmers that let me come to their fields. They let me walk around, they let me ask them a lot of silly questions about what's going on. But we scalp for insects, we count them. If you really want to have a great day, count for bugs, right? You get on your hands and your knees and you sweep them into a big net and you sit there with a magnifying glass and an aspirator and you suck them all in this little tube. If anybody wants to do that, give me a call, I'd be happy to take you along. But those are the things that are really important to us. As we start to limit some of our dependence to herbicides and pesticides, we have to understand what's in the environment. And so that's the importance of what I'm doing. I'm also looking at slugs, right? Occasionally we see this really kind of ugly impact of slugs when we have really wet, kind of warm years. We could extrapolate some data and think maybe this could be one of those because we've been very, very warm, we've been very, very wet. And so what we do is we monitor slug populations so we can see how those are affecting seeds that are being planted, but also especially soybeans after they've germinated, and help make decisions that we can do agronomic adjustments after that. There are a lot of other things we do. We'll talk about this on-farm herbicide trial in a little bit. Is something that's coming up in the future. We're also looking at corn research, right? So this is a a black cutworm, and this is a corn borer. And these both have very different types of functions and things that they do. If you've ever had black cutworm, you know what it is. It kind of crawls along at the ground as a caterpillar and cuts off your corn. We're monitoring these in Fayette and Greene County because of the impact that that can have to our corn supplies. The corn borer is more so for our folks that are growing sweet corn, right? Because we have a lot of demand that we have to have this high quality product that when people shuck it back, it doesn't have worms in it, right? And so there becomes this very regimented, scheduled application of insecticide, and we're trapping and we're monitoring these so that we can maybe take some of those out. A lot of this is so we aren't quite so dependent on pesticides and insecticides, but we're making these very wisely and we're making them timely and smart so that they continue to have efficacy as we move forward with our cropping cycles. So this year, we've actually started incorporating some research into the local. This one's actually in Washington County, but it's something that we're doing that's very specific to Western Pennsylvania. And what we're looking at are different rates and sources of nitrogen on grass hay, and we're looking at tonnage and quality. This big conversation always happens: if I have legumes, I don't need nitrogen, right? Am I still producing all the hay that I need? And we're looking at the economic impact of that. Do I really need this? Don't I need this? Maybe I could produce more hay on 50 acres if I'm managing that very well than trying to cover 100 acres that I'm not managing to that optimum level. And we recognize that all the inputs are getting higher, right? If it's not fertilizer or if it's fuel, but our time is very, very valuable. And so how can we kind of look at this and see what's happening? If you're using nitrogen sources, you also might understand what stabilizers are, right there. I'll try to not drift into the chemistry part of this, but things happen, right? Nitrogen's a very fickle animal. And so we have these things called stabilizers. Do they pay, right? Are we adding more money to something? Do we really see that benefit? So that's kind of the goal that we're looking at. We've got 12 small plots that we're working through with this producer, and we'd like to have a field day for this in September and kind of focus on what we've learned and how we can expand this into the area, time that better with what else is going on with this changing environment and weather that we're seeing. The other one is we're looking at herbicide demonstrations. Hopefully Mr. Bird's going to let me do this because I put it on my slide. This one's really, really important to our community. And if we're thinking, I keep going back to herbicides, but our need for changing herbicides and avoiding these resistant weeds and having all of these things available to us is incredibly important. And so one of my worst stories I have as a young ag agent is I started this demonstration, and I don't know if you can see this well, but this bean is really speckled, right? And I sprayed some of these herbicides, and this farmer called me about 2 days later and said, I don't know what the heck you did out here, but you have ruined this plot of beans, right? Sometimes this happens, right? These older technologies do these kinds of things, and this is an understanding to go back to farmers. We're looking at how we can show different controls. We're looking at this potential damage. Well, you can tell it outgrew it, right? But I was panicked. I was thinking, how am I going to reimburse this guy for the beans that I killed in this field? But life goes on. And so we're going to incorporate this as a soybean field day. We're going to go out. We're going to talk about beans. Maybe we can talk about how we work on deer damage. Take some ideas, throw some of that out. We'd like to have Farm Bureau there and their thoughts on that situation. How we can do better with some of our varieties, how we can manage better for herbicide resistances, and also kind of educate people on what this damage may look like as they start to use different modes of action. The last thing I want to talk about as far as what we are doing is the the training meetings. During 2023, there were 59 county residents, right? So that wasn't just the people that attended meetings, but the residents of the county. And I will say the bulk of those were at agronomic pesticide meetings. But we had a lot of people that got online and did things with our Making Cover Crops Pay or Living on a Few Acres, or they attended crops days and pasture walks. The good part of this is that was up 68%. And so whether we're marketing well or whether we're connecting to more people, we're doing something, right? And so I want to do better connecting with you so that next time I have the opportunity to do this, maybe it won't be up so high, but maybe instead of 74 people, it's 174, right? I need to get more folks involved in my programming, and I need to do better at delivering the education that you want. So how do we connect? I believe that my job is a field agronomist, not a desk agronomist. And I can't explain to my boss why I'm not doing paperwork if I'm sitting at my desk all the time, right? I can tell him why I'm not doing it if I'm in the field. So my plea is that you call me. I think that we have to see things, we have to touch things, we have to be out there doing this in the field, not over the phone, not through email, not through text. Text is great, but the connection that we make with the land and with the crop is invaluable. And so call me, email me. There's lots of ways we can do this, but please, by all means, if you don't need me, maybe a friend or a colleague does, I will put some cards over here on the table. I'd love to get connected any way that we can. We also have an online newsletter. It's called Field Crop News. It's hit or miss, right? What we try to do is we put out this newsletter across the state, and we have a very big, very diverse state, right? And sometimes what happens in Lancaster is not applicable to Fayette County, believe that or not, right? But we try very, very well to do that. And so we currently have 61 residents in the county that receive this newsletter every week. And we talk about corn, beans, cover crops, forages. But we also advertise any of our events that we're having here. You can sign up online or you can scan that QR code. I've also got some cards for that if you're interested on how you would do that. And the last of these emails. Email preference, right? So mailings are not a big thing anymore, right? We're really drifting towards email communications, and I know that's hard for a lot of us to kind of accept that that's the way that we're going. But this is the best way if we want to get connected with Penn State and myself and the things that are happening. And you're going to set this up, and then you have the ability to check what's important. Is it beef? Is it dairy? Are you a beginning farmer? Are you into marketing? Sometimes solar is really important, right? We have a team that's just working on understanding solar leasing, understanding what that means to us, and they've got lawyers involved in that process. You can get any of these newsletters based on this. We call it an area of interest. And I'll tell you, you can also go back and uncheck them if you don't like what you're seeing, because sometimes that does happen. We also have podcasts. I don't know how many of us are podcasters, but I spend a lot of time in my truck driving around doing stuff. And 10 years ago, podcasts weren't a thing, and I never thought that it would be something for me. But the amount of knowledge I can gain driving an hour up the road is unbelievable. And so every other week, I host some of these. I participate in some of these. We really have some pretty smart people come on and give some talks. The Hefty brothers, everybody's got their opinion about those guys too, right? But there's some really fantastic information you can get by using podcasts. Ours is called the Agronomy Highlights. You can scan it there to find it. So what I want to do is leave you with this. There are things I can do beside pesticide meetings. I think everyone associates me with the last thing they see before they sleep for 2 hours. I have other things, other bags in my tricks, and I can do other stuff. I'm free to use. Call me. Let's do something. We are doing research over here, right? I've been in Western Pennsylvania long enough to know that sometimes people feel very isolated and they're not connected to the rest of the university. That's not the case. I'm here. I'm willing to do whatever it is. I plan to be here for as long as you'll have me. So let's do something productive together. Let's accomplish something that you want, and let's get connected and make that happen. So that's all I've got. If you've got questions, I'd be happy to take them, or we can save that for the Q&A, however you want to do it.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, before Secretary Redding talks, we're going to have a special guest speaker. If everybody wants to take 5 minutes to use the restroom, grab another donut, grab a coffee, do whatever you got to do, then we'll get ready for the rest of the program.
Can I have your attention for a second? Just so we can move along, maybe in the next minute or two, let's, we can carry these conversations on later, but we want to keep on schedule.
Absolutely, and listen, I'll be in touch with you, and I think you gave me a card.
I did,
okay.
yeah.
So I'll be in touch.
Please.
I may lose it before the end of this morning, but
That's all right.
thank you.
We about ready? While we're waiting for the honor and pleasure I have of introducing Secretary Redding, would the Fayette County Farm Bureau board members please stand for recognition? I know you're here. Maybe they didn't hear me. Marin, you lead the way. Where's Jennifer? Todd, I know you didn't hear me. You still don't. Would the Fayette County Farm Bureau board members please stand for recognition? Marin Andrews, Jacob Ross, Jennifer Orr, who has donated or has got our milk and everything here today. Todd Miner. Who else is hiding? I know I got more. Tyler Anderson, our ROD. You please stand up, Tyler. There you go. That's our regional guy. Thank you, Tyler. So I got Jennifer, Jacob, Jason White, who is the state fish and wildlife guy. He's not here. He walked out. Okay. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Miss Adeline Reed. And where are you at, Adeline? I saw you over here somewhere. She's here somewhere. Anyway, she is a dynamo at Vote Tech School, teaching all these wonderful kids who are going to stand up now and show off their FFA jackets. This here is the future of our agriculture in this county for sure, and I'll be back to talk about them a little bit later. So it is my pleasure to introduce a friend and a great advocate for agriculture, Secretary Russell Redding. So the bio I got is that Russell was unanimously confirmed by the Pennsylvania Senate to serve as Pennsylvania's 27th Secretary of Agriculture in May 2022. Governor Shapiro nominated Redding to continue serving as Secretary after he served from 2015 to 2022 under Governor Wolf. He is the former Dean of the School of Agriculture and Environmental Science at Del Valley. Russell has extensive experience as a public servant, having spent more than 30 years serving in Pennsylvania and Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. He worked on Capitol Hill as Ag Policy Advisor to U.S. Senator Harris Wofford, served nearly 25 years in the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, serving as Secretary from 2009 to 2011 under Governor Ed Rendell, and from 2015 to 2022 under Governor Tom Wolf. He currently serves on the Agricultural Subcommittee of the USDA Equity Commission. He earned a BS in agricultural, and that's the right BS. He earned a BS in agricultural education and MS in agricultural and extension education from Penn State University. He's a graduate of the Agribusiness Executive Program, a native of Pennsylvania. Redding has an innate understanding of food and agriculture stemming from his youth on his family's dairy farm and has his time as a dairy farmer operator. And just as a little add-on to his bio, Russell has a preserved farm, and Russell knows about farming because he does farm. So it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the Secretary of Agriculture from Pennsylvania, Russell Redding.
Hey, Darrell, thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I have a presentation. since we always try to advocate Fayette County and get Fayette County on the map, we have a shirt, a Fayette County shirt, that on the back, it has all of the beef producers who decided to help sponsor this shirt, and that's all. I'm good. They can hear me. I got a big mouth. So, Russell, you don't have to wear this all the time, but wear it once in a while.
I will wear it with pride. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Daryl, thank you. The commissioner said, I think when you were talking to Daryl, you could get 4 words in. You were lucky. Right. Same way. But Daryl, thank you. Thanks for being persistent in the invite here to the commissioners. Always good to be in Fayette County. I want to say thank you for the warm hospitality each time that I'm here. It is good to be back on the Fairgrounds, particularly we were here last August 4th, a little different weather and heat on this ground, but always good to be here. Honored to be out and about across Pennsylvania. We've been on a little bit of a run from Wednesday, started out in the Port of Philadelphia, dealing with a couple of issues of international trade, and headed to Butler and to Lawrence and to Fayette, and but always appreciate Western Pennsylvania. And Daryl, all joking aside, I mean, this guy is a wonderful advocate for agriculture, as you know, but he's a great advocate for Fayette County, and does an amazing job of sort of elevating the voice of the farmers here in the county, always sort of respectful, always sort of constructive, and looking at ways to grow agriculture in this county. So, Daryl, thank you, and to the Farm Bureau members, thank you for what you do. To the commissioners, I appreciate the invitation to come back. I apologize for missing you last year for the 6th roundtable, but good to be here for the 7th. And I think any time that we can gather to talk about the future of ag, it is an important conversation. Right, and I appreciate the call out on the front side that you're looking at how do you buy local, how do you respect and recognize what is actually produced here, being consumed here. It matters, right? And I think that's part of the conversation we're having statewide about what we do in Pennsylvania in terms of what we produce. We're proud of it. And we've got a lot of folks who are appreciating that. But how do we make that connection a very intentional connection? And to me, that means a lot. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't matter where it came from, it doesn't matter. It's got to matter. It's got to matter that you recognize the value of what's here as part of the fabric of this community, the fabric of economic development. It's the fabric of a civil society, right? Look around the world. Look at what's happening. Look at the news in the evening, right? These folks are in search of peace, and they're in search of something to eat, right? And we make that, at least in part, possible. It's an important conversation. So thank you. Always good to be with Senator Stefano. You keep moving, right? Weren't you just off to my left here? Representative Warner, thank you to the House and Senate members. I can't tell you how lucky you are to have folks who are engaged with us in the many, many discussions around food and agriculture at the state level. I mean, there are a lot of things that are happening, good things happening, and we feel very lucky to have a team from Fayette County that gets it. I feel like I should be answering appropriations questions right now that both members serve on Appropriations Committee. We had that opportunity back in February at my appropriations hearings. I always look forward to that exchange. I learn a lot about what it is that members are thinking, but also it gives me a sense to understand when I come to these types of events who is actually talking to them. Right, and what the issues that you raise inform sort of their perspectives, and by their work on appropriations helps inform both the administration and the department of what we do. I feel like each time that I do this that I could spend all of my time just sort of going table by table, because I feel like one of the most important things I can do is to say thank you, right, to what people are doing. And whether it's in the Penn State Extension, and Justin, I appreciate you making the decision to come to Pennsylvania, right, and coming to Penn State. Listen, I have a wife who worked in Extension for 38 years. Understand Extension. We use it on the farm, still use it in the work that we do on the farm. I think it's one of the most important developments in our nation's history is the land-grant university system. Right? Think about what was happening. I'm from Gettysburg, right? So Lincoln always looms large, right? But during the Civil War, they did two incredibly important things that changed America. One was creation of the land-grant university system in America, right? Congress and the president, divided nation, divided times, came together to pass the Morrill Act, right, which we know today is the land-grant university system. What was the other one? It's creation of our U.S. Department of Agriculture, which Lincoln called the People's Department. It was that important. Two things, divided nation, divided times, president and Congress came together. So I think of that as both inspirational, that there is hope for folks coming together to do really important things, but also how it's transformed both our nation and our food system and society. So it is important work. So Penn State is part of that fabric of Pennsylvania. We're lucky to have Penn State and the Extension Service, but we're also incredibly grateful to, Farm Bureau and a Grange and a Penn Ag Industries and DFA and Land O'Lakes and our folks in nutrition and our ag teachers and the green industry. I just want to say thank you, right? Because everything that we do here is a partnership that's done with a lot of other people, right? And I'm proud of how it's built, but there's a lot more to do. And again, just a note of thanks to each who are part of the agricultural community here in Fayette County, but also who see the opportunity. I go a lot of places, and I'll be honest, that sometimes I'm not sure, right, what it is that people believe. Right? I mean, are they thinking about agriculture as, one of those pillars of economic development? Do they see the opportunity in it, or do they simply expect it to be there because they like it? I can tell you, being in this business, it is not going to stay here just because you and I like it. It'll stay here if people see opportunity in it. It is an important sort of framework for the department to think about what it is that we do and not to assume that it's going to stay here. It takes a lot of investment, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of encouragement, it takes the right policies, it takes the right investments that we need to do. And quite frankly, those investments are as much about what local governments do, right? What townships do with ag security areas, what county commissioners do in terms of investments in conservation districts and farmland preservation, what they do with local marketing and building that economic development fabric. It's also a partnership with our federal government, right? What happens in Congress matters. Right now, we're trying to get the federal farm bill done. It's a big part of what we're doing. So the point is that this is a collective conversation. I just feel fortunate to have a department and work in a department and have that agriculture be both my vocation and my avocation. It's a gift. And to get a chance to sort of talk about what we do and work with the people who make it happen every day, it's a gift. And there are many who feel that way. But that work is a partnership between many. So thank you. So what has changed since I was here last August? Right? I was thinking about this last night, about what has changed Pennsylvania, the world, since last August. Anything? A little bit, right? So I'm thinking about what's happened. So we've gone through the full cycle of the 2023 crop year, right? Pretty good year, right? Except for those beans you tried to kill. It was a pretty good year. Right? Think about where we were in the outset of 2022 to 23. Market's pretty good. Price is pretty good. Crop is good. Weather, all things considered, pretty good. In this business, there are pockets of pain. Right? Every place I go, there's something that doesn't work. Maybe the market's not completely right. But the crop year, in retrospect, pretty good. So we're looking forward to 2024. What's happened to international markets? What's happened? Right? It's been crazy, right? Just looking around the world. Forget about Baltimore for a moment, right? But just think about what's happened around the markets and international trade. And I watch this pretty closely and watch what's happened, particularly in the Red Sea, right? That's a major shipping channel, adding 7 weeks to container delivery. So if you're shipping beans anywhere or shipping stuff in, you picked up another 7 weeks on the water. It's a big deal for moving stuff. So what's happened there is important to us. And by the way, 95% of the available stomachs are someplace other than the United States of America. We're 5% of the world's population. We're in the food business, right? So what we produce has got to go somewhere. You've got to buy it, or it needs to find a buyer somewhere other than here, right? So 95% of those available stomachs are someplace other than the United States of America, right? Shipping and international trade is really important. It's gotten more complicated over the last year, but it's also become more important to us over the last year. I'm from Adams County and grow a lot of apples, right? I've just in the last couple of days have put this story in here that 3 years ago, India decided to put a 70% tariff on U.S. apples. Basically, you're out of the market, right? You're not going to pay a 70% tax on apples. That happened 3 years ago. Now we've got all kinds of apples, right? We're trying to get back in that market. The chief negotiator for agricultural trade for America is from Crawford County, Pennsylvania. Right? Chief negotiator. Amazing guy. Came to the farm show this year. Right? They've worked to get us back. The administration's got us back in. We're still at a 30% tariff, but let me tell you what that means in Adams County. Right? We used to have an 11 million bushel market that now has dropped to 800,000. That market has now been filled by Turkey and Poland. So if we think we're not connected, right? These are hometown guys I see for breakfast on a Saturday morning at the Apple Bin restaurant. You think they're not worried about what's happening around the world? Yeah, very concerned. You couple that with immigration issues, you couple that with some of the interest rate concerns. It's palpable, right? But they're in this discussion. We're in this discussion in a big way. So that has certainly, international trade has become part of that discussion. But we've also recognized that folks really continue to like to eat. Right? It's a good reminder. Folks, you guys like to eat? Yeah, I saw you at the donuts. I mean, come on. I know. The point is that there's a lot of food, right? We produce really good food. So that's continued. The high path avian influenza has sort of subsided a little bit, sort of reared its head on Christmas Eve here in Pennsylvania. And now we see this sort of cross between species. It's never happened before between poultry and dairy, right? Down in Texas and New Mexico and Kansas, we now have a positive in Ohio, right? So 12 positive cases has never happened before to go from avian to bovine, right? And you've got 2 human contact through animals, not through food, but through animals, right? The point is that their birds are still out there. This is our biggest threat, but high path AI has certainly come and hopefully goes. The USDA released their latest census of agriculture. Just came out, 5-year census, right? What did it say? Yeah. So in Pennsylvania, we lost 200,000 acres and 4,000 farms. Anybody satisfied with that? No. I mean, these are the kinds of things that you have an index now to say, look at that. It has really encouraged and inspired us. Listen, we've been on a path to change for 200 years. I understand that. But when you look at where we need to be in terms of food security, right? What we need in terms of a functioning society, it's around food and agriculture. So how do we protect that? That has recently come out. We can talk more about it. We have a proposed budget that I think responds to both market opportunities and continued need for investments that I'll mention. We have an economic development strategy that the governor has helped with DCED and many other economic development partners. I'm proud of that. I mean, it's the first time in nearly 20 years we've got an economic development strategy for Pennsylvania. But I'm also proud that it has agriculture as one of the cornerstones. Right? We're in there with life sciences and manufacturing and energy and robotics. And to me, the agriculture is a crosscut to each one of those, right? That's important. In the strategy, cornerstone talks about where we want to go in terms of the economic development thrust of Pennsylvania. So we have that. And then just closing out sort of the change. I mean, we have continued investments from the Farm Bill, the PA Farm Bill, and we're the only state in the nation that has its own state-level Farm Bill. Did that in 2019, came out of an economic impact study we did with the Temple University and the Fox School of Business. I always like to say that when I'm in the presence of Penn State, right, we did that because if you go to Penn State or you go to the department and say, is agriculture important in Pennsylvania, what are they going to say? Yes. If I go to Temple, maybe not, right? We went to the Fox School of Business and asked them to do 2 things for us. One is help us quantify the size and scale of agriculture in Pennsylvania, but do that helping us to define what is agriculture in Pennsylvania, right? And what's fascinating is I will go places that will never mention a cow as part of agriculture. They will never mention a mushroom. They will never talk about forest products as part of agriculture, right? We're Penn's Woods. That's our name. But they'll never mention forestry as part of agriculture. So we rebuilt the definition around agriculture in what we need it to be, what it is. That led us to the PA Farm Bill, and the folks in the governor and the House and the Senate came together, right? We did this really important piece of legislation that complements our federal farm bill, but it makes very, very targeted investments, and we'll see some of those today at the CTI, right? The ag and youth grant, the greenhouse work, and some of the direct and matching grants, that's part of our farm bill. But so is, the Murphys that we visited last summer, as part of our work on small meat processing. So are the ACAP projects that we were visiting yesterday in Lawrence and Butler counties. All of that's part of our farm bill. So that is what's changed in the last year, right? So a lot has changed, a lot of things, a lot of good, and there's some challenges that are part of the dynamics of Pennsylvania and American agriculture. So a couple of things, and then I'm not sure, Commissioner, in terms of time and how you want to present. Okay, all right. So you want me to fiddle around a little bit? I mean, is that, no. But seriously, to say that, try to always sort of give some perspective that, for context of what Fayette County is doing, what the state is doing, what the issues are that each of us in our respective roles are responding to these injects, right? About what's happening in trade, what's happening in some of the environmental issues, what's happening in workforce development. But always trying to sort of take a long view of this. I think that's the piece that I appreciate most around agriculture, is these are not about sort of, you're going to make decisions what you plant this year and what you do, right? There are decisions that are this year decisions. There are decisions that are, your lifetime decisions. And then there are decisions that are forever. Right? And the forever decisions are things you make around what you do with the transition of assets. Where do you put an easement on your farm that says that this farm will be a productive agricultural asset in perpetuity? I look at my deed every once in a while to remind myself of what my mother and father-in-law obligated me to do. Right? The interesting thing is, it's not predicated on me. It's predicated on their decision, and whoever follows me will have that deed to manage. We've asked 6,300 farms in Pennsylvania to honor a deed that says, irrespective of what it is that you do or you desire, this farm shall be a productive ag asset of this Commonwealth forever. It's an important statement, right? It gives us an opportunity in Pennsylvania to do something that no other state can claim. Right? No other state can claim the number of acres and number of farms that are permanently preserved in agriculture. No other state. When I make my list of assets of what Pennsylvania has, I lead with land that is preserved forever, right? I add to that list the 3 ports that link us around the world. The Port of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Erie, right? Only state with 3 ports. I can go to the Great Lakes, I can go to the Gulf of Mexico, and go in the Atlantic. You look around, look at the map of the United States, right? The states that would love to have a port and some activity, right? I think that's an important part. 44 inches of rain is an asset, as long as it doesn't come on the last couple of days, right? But I look at that and say, yeah, I'll take 44 inches of natural rain. There are a lot of places that are trying to figure out where the well is, right? So 44 inches. We've got more young farmers in Pennsylvania than any other state in the nation. More young farmers in PA than any other state in the nation. Right? Confirmed in the last census again, right? Number 2 in natural gas. Is that worth anything to us? Yeah, you bet. Right? These are things, as I think about competitive footing of what the state can do and where we are, notwithstanding the pressures of markets and pressures of just society. But these are assets. These are things that give us a competitive advantage. And I add to that the local leadership and the folks who every day are making decisions about investments in agriculture, investments in conservation, investments in extension, the investments we make in ag security areas, the investments we make in food processing. That is all part of the asset list. But there's a lot to do. I'll touch briefly on sort of this budget because I think it builds on a couple of themes I've just noted. One is around economic development. At the end of the day, agriculture is a business, right? Same three needs that every other business has: access to markets, access to capital, access to people. Right? You've got to manage those three. So we've been very intentional in the department and over the years making sure that we are thinking about the business needs of agriculture. Right? So that's why you see in this strategy where we're placed, why you see in the economic development offering of the Commonwealth over the years keep building towards food and agriculture and direct investment. It's why we have a beginning farmer tax credit. It's why we've got other sort of economic development assistance. It's why the Farm Bill includes farm vitality grants, right? Really important. We've done 400 of those transition plans roughly over the last year or so, a couple of years, so important there. But the economic development component is important. There's two, more than that, but two things I'll call out. One is you may have heard that the governor's proposed an animal health lab for Western Pennsylvania, right? And we've talked about this for a long time, and anybody who's in animal agriculture here knows this story, right? That the closest lab, animal health lab to you, it may be in another state, by the way, right? But the Pennsylvania ones are in State College. You either go to New Bolton Center in Chester County, or you bring it to Harrisburg, right? And we got to thinking about this and said to the governor early on about, and this happened right about the time the Norfolk Southern train derailment, right? And all the scramble of trying to figure out like how to get things tested. And you know what? We don't have a lab in Western Pennsylvania. Then we had Allegheny County had an outbreak of high-path avian influenza in the city, right? And these folks aren't, by the way, on some RFID tag. They don't have any like proximity note, right? They don't have a pin in the map like we do in commercial enterprises. We're scrambling the city. We just knew we had sick birds inside Allegheny County. Where do you go to get them tested? Where's your veterinarians? So the point is that we really feel like this is the moment with both the personal experiences of the last couple of years, but also as a statement that all of the animal agriculture west of I-99 matters. Right? We were in Lawrence County yesterday with Senator Vogel to talk about this. In this proposed budget, for the first time, is funding to support a Western animal agriculture lab somewhere here in the western part of PA. Right? That's important. We see growth and opportunity in animal ag. There are 1 million critters, west of I-99. That's before you add all the deer and the chronic wasting disease issues. That's before you put the 2 racetracks in here that we have in the western part of the state. That's before you add all of these backyard birds that are people like them, no complaints, but they're just different, right? They have these birds for purposes of maybe a few eggs. I've come to appreciate that a lot of them just have them for companionship. They like them, and that's all fine, but the avian influenza has nothing to do with the size of the flock. It's about the bird you have, right? So you think about how do we get avian influenza? It's through our wild migrating birds. So that's an issue, but all of that comes together to say we have a need and we see opportunity in the western part of Pennsylvania for animal agriculture. And then related to that is sort of the innovation side, that at the end of the day, the progress we've made in agriculture is a result of people taking risk, making investments, but doing that with innovation. So in the fund, in the budget this year is money for an Ag Innovation Fund, which we've talked about for a long time, but have not been able to do. So we're excited about that as well. For the dairy industry, we're going to borrow a page from what we've done in the crop insurance and support the dairy margin coverage. We think it's important with 5,000 dairy farms in the state. We can't control the price, right, but we can try to mitigate the risk. So we're going to propose to do support on the DMC. And we need to continue to make investments in dairy in Pennsylvania, right? Bill Jackson's here and others just to say that this market has changed a lot. They can give you more firsthand perspective, but I'll ask this group, how many of you drink more fluid milk today than you did 5 years ago? More today than 5 years ago. Okay? How many consume more dairy products today than you did 5 years ago? The FFA, you guys eat? I didn't see one hand go up, right? Sure you do, right? But the point is that this is sort of normal, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. But the point is it's shifted, right? And I leave the house in the morning, I put my cereal bar in my shirt pocket, right? And I pick up milk at Sheetz, right? I think I'm normal, but I don't. There's a correlation between dry cereal consumption and milk consumption. That's one example. So we're eating a lot more dairy. And by the way, dairy consumption, total dairy consumption is up. Contrary to the news, dairy consumption is up. That's a good thing for us. But for Pennsylvania, we have to make sure that we have the processing lines, right, that correspond to what society wants. That's been our challenge. That's been our quest, to try to find additional dairy processing that looks like more cheese, more yogurt, more ice cream, more butter, right? All of those component pieces that are important. We have the fluid milk. We love the fluid milk. We need to keep it, by the way. But we also need to add these other things in. So that's been the dairy journey a little bit. So there's resources in this budget that corresponds to that. So we can come back to budget in the Western Lab if you would like. A couple of other points just to say on the optimism side. Part of our job collectively, I think both today, is to say, here's where we are in Fayette County. This is what we know to be, the assets that we have. We've got a vision for agriculture in the state. How do we use those assets, right, to really position agriculture as an economic enterprise, respecting its history, at the same time recognizing how critical it is to our future, right? So when I think about the assets of the county and the state, the things I've shared, I think about where we are in terms of location, right? We're in this market. Again, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Having people around you is a good thing if you want to feed them, right? The challenge is, what do you do when they encroach upon that prime agricultural land, right? What do you do when the infrastructure needs? What do you do with that's part of the conversation about what we do. But we're lucky to have 50 million people in this sort of corridor. That's really important from a market standpoint, right? It's the only way you get to be number 2 in direct farm sales in Pennsylvania. Direct farm sales, right? Number 2 in the nation, meaning from producer to consumer, number 2 in the nation. Who's number 1? California. Pennsylvania's number 2, right? Always think about that. That's a significant change in the last 15 years. Right? That tells me that all of that diversity we're doing, the on-farm value-added work, processing, farm stands, make your list, is part of the story. Making sure that we're looking at the entrepreneurial spirit of agriculture and respecting that. How do we help that? It's alive and well. I see it every day. I've been inspired every time I go out. There are things that people are doing that the odds are against them. And they have figured out, how to make that work, right? Amazing. And there are folks who are first generation, you're like, well, how did you get here? And I've been with 10th generation farms. Like, thank you for being here, right? That's a really important transition. I've been on Amish and English. I've been in the forest and the hills. It's amazing. There's things inside the industry that people have figured out. They're smart, they're entrepreneurial, and there's a support system that's really critical. And where agriculture grows and thrives, it is welcomed. It is nourished, right? It is supported by a lot of people who respect it. And to me, that's always the ask, is to get people to stop and think. If people stop and think, agriculture wins. But first they have to think. I like that, right? I like all of those things that are accrued to an open space, water and groundwater recharge, food access, jobs and economic activity. That entrepreneurial spirit is part of that. There's a great structure across the state with extension. I'll come back to extension and say it all the time. It's a great resource. Justin put out the call to say, if I can help you, ask, right? That's important. We have economic development entities across the state that are recognizing the value, and I thank Fayette County and Fayette Penn for what you're doing and really being thoughtful about this. How do we capitalize on what our assets are, right? I think that's a really important part. And then you have continued growth in organics in Pennsylvania. We're number 3 in organic production in the United States, right? Led by organic proteins, right? Poultry and eggs boost us. It's not by vegetables. California can claim that. On the protein side, we're number 1 in organic poultry, number 1 in organic eggs, and number 3 in organic sales total sales. These are things that are part of the assets, right? There's a lot of good work being done. So look forward to working with you, and I applaud the commissioners for their vision of agriculture and support for that vision, but also planting that ask to this community, right? What do the farmers need, right? What do you need that is helping you realize both the economic opportunity, but also response to the entrepreneurial spirit, right? What can we do more? And we have this conversation in the House and the Senate and the governor's office all the time about how do we help, right? And I get an earful every time about what doesn't work. I get that. This is a big, complicated place, right? It's a very complicated place. A lot of people have an opinion about it. But we want to make sure, and I'm proud of the governor and what he said about agriculture, is that we want to see that respected inside the economic strategy. We want to support it financially. And with that has given us an opportunity to talk about workforce issues, direct investments, making sure that the farm community is supported, but we're also focused on these international trade and related concerns. So I'll stop there, entertain questions and comments, but always want to end where I began with a simple thank you. I appreciate very much the invitation, the opportunity to be part of this conversation about agriculture in Fayette County and Western Pennsylvania and across this nation. And always want to say thank you to the FFA for what you do. Some of you know my story. I was in a long time ago in 9th grade in the Gettysburg High School and was just lucky enough to have an ag teacher by the name of Mr. George Glenn, who saw something in me that I did not see and helped to cultivate that. And I can still see myself in a position like in the front of a classroom reciting what it is that I believe. And I thought, how cool is that, right? Where else can you as a 15, 16-year-old stand up in a classroom and say, this is what I believe? And have that belief be part of agriculture, right? That you see a future in ag. So that was a teacher. That was somebody just inspired me. So thank you to the FFA and thanks for the blue and gold. Look forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
This year, our losses were in the area of $350,000. This is just about ready to put some of us out of business.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Yeah. It's funny that the first or second question in a lot of the forums ends up being a wildlife question. So this happens to be the first question, right? It's real. I mean, just to say, you're spot on. I mean, we get this across the state. I am pleased to say, to respond to your point. One is there's a package of bills that are moving, and I'm encouraged by that package that includes, being able to do more with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. They're the entity that we need, by the way. But there's a package of bills moving, right? I think in both House and Senate. 4-bill package. One is about some of the additional hunting. There's making it ease of. Help me out. I'm trying to remember the 4 points inside the bill, but there's a. Yeah, there's a Sunday hunting piece.
Hunting, permitting, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, there's a permitting piece.
People on the game commission.
Yeah,
board,
farmer on the game,
fishing
yeah.
commission board, so that we can get
Yeah.
people on there who are in the industry that can help formulate the laws instead of what's going. I'm not going to go there, but you know, we need input. We need to be able to have a seat at the table to discuss what's affecting people like Mr. Bird.
Yeah.
I've been on television this winter. Daryl's gotten me places to speak on radio.
Yeah.
I've written to legislators, written to the game commission, the insurance company where I have my car insurance, and basically we hear crickets.
Yeah.
It's a long-term problem, but how in the world do I go out and put 50 years of my labor back out in that field knowing that I may lose half of it or more just because of what's happened in the last 2 years?
Yeah, no, it's a real problem. I mean, I think ultimately the response is twofold. One is you've got to thin this herd. At the end of the day, you've got to thin this herd. I live in Gettysburg, and I mentioned that. I was on the Friends of the National Parks at the time that the National Park Service did a management plan for the park because there was a tipping point where the deer ruined the understory of the national park, ruined it, right? And the recognition was to build that back, you had to thin the deer herd, right? And they did that, and you look at it today. So part of it is you've got to manage the herd to a point where whatever it is that they're, where they're living and what they're consuming can sustain that. You're the person sustaining them, right? That's part of the issue. So part two is you have to find a way, and I've said this to the Game Commission, at some point there has to be some insurance product provision somehow to recognize the losses are real. They're quantifiable losses. That should not fall to the U.S. Department of Agriculture from a crop loss standpoint. That should be on the critter because you know where the loss is coming from. But how do you build an insurance product that looks at that or compensates somehow? I think that's part of the long-term answer. We've got a lot of folks who are buying land and posting the land, right? They feed on your land, they feed on my land, my crops. So I don't know how to manage all of that, but getting a good package that makes it as easy as possible, and Daryl's going to tell me how to do it.
One of the helps that we can get is Pennsylvania is one of the few states that has no federal money coming into Pennsylvania to help offset crop damage from deer. So, we're lucky enough to have the chairman of the Ag Committee at the federal level. We need whatever kind of push we can get from the governor and Department of Ag to try to get some federal money into the state to help offset. You guys go out of business.
Yeah.
We don't want that. So that's my point.
No, I didn't know that there was sort of federal dollars flowing into other states for crop deer damage, livestock, or not livestock, but wildlife damage.
Programs that help farmers
Okay.
offset crop damage. Yes, we need to get that into Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll check it out. But thank you. I wish I had like this clarion answer that somehow we could control what it is. We've been in many conversations with the Game Commission about working with wardens, being more sort of supportive of crop damage harvesting, make that harvest as easy to donate to the food bank as possible. But there's some other things we need to do. Yes, sir.
Key point on that, in Westmoreland County, we talked with the Game Commission, and they did okay taking more deer for crop damage, whether it be your workers, anyone that works for the farm and so forth. But again, that takes time away from what we do on a day-to-day basis. But they are open to having a conversation because they do know that there's extensive damage going on. I don't know about down here, but Westmoreland County, they're definitely open to having those conversations. So I would open that up with the Game Commission directly and see if they'll, because they have more pull than some of us, in our political applications that can give us the direction of what we can actually do with what they.
Yeah, we need the Game Commission, right? I mean, it's absolutely. So it sounds like some progress in Westmoreland, but we'll pick it up here. It's on our to-do list. We've had some extensive conversations. It's come up recently with the Farm Bureau in New Harrisburg last week talking about it. Legislators mentioned it was with Senator Vogel yesterday who brought up, hey, what do you want to do on crop damage? So it's an active conversation. There's just not an answer today to say, I don't know how to manage that short term. That's my worry and yours.
May I ask another question?
Yeah, please ask.
The creek runs through my farm. Activity downstream from me has plugged the creek channel, and now my farm bottom is flooded. I'm not allowed to go down and do anything. If I do, I get to be an inhabitant of our jail.
Yeah.
This is a thorny issue. You can't touch a creek, you can't clean it, but I'm losing farmland. Somebody's going hungry because I
Yep.
can't produce on those acres. I still pay taxes on them. I still write a check to Farm Credit to pay for those acres.
So let me ask you, and this is usually like the third or fourth question that comes at me, so I've got one and two. You've talked to local conservation district, right? Local DEP office. It doesn't sound like there's been a lot of satisfaction there, right? Not an emergency permit for purposes of removal? Nothing. And this, just for clarification, the blockage in that flow is not on your property. It's on a neighboring property, but you're getting the effects of it. Yeah.
And now it's backing up into mine.
Yeah, right.
And I've talked to people from the Department of Mining, since it was an ash pile that eroded and did all this siltation. Yeah, we'll get something done here. They've taken water samples, but nothing's happened.
Yeah. So the immediate.
It's an expensive project to fix this.
Yeah, most of those are, right? There's some impediment somewhere that's now, because of years of erosion and activity, have re-diverted streams through fields, right? Yes, right. The best I could say, we'll talk to DEP. Senator Yaw, by the way, right? Senator Stefano. He's been on this. He took me to look at a project up around Lycoming, north of Williamsport, Lycoming County. Sounds like the same description, but now the stream bed is out across his farmer's field because of neighbor, debris and such, and how to go in with an emergency permit. I think there was an emergency permit in that case. Ashley will have to check, but yeah. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate raising these points. Thank you. And I meant to introduce Ashley Fair earlier, so just staff extraordinaire, somebody's communication director, but also all of those farm bill questions for PA. There's the the teacher and guide to all of that. Thank you. Okay.
Any more questions? I saw somebody over here. I'm going to let you talk in here. Well, they won't be able to.
With respect to the avian flu and the backyard flocks, I'm a poultry fancier, actually, and it's a little different than backyard flocks. For us, we have to be blood tested every month for avian influenza if we want to show birds. I'm also a poultry technician for PA. And just kind of wondering if there was any, I know the vaccine part of the AI has been around for years, and they just haven't done it because, I believe, mainly because of exports. But I think we're going to have to bite the bullet one of these days and just start to vaccinate and pay the indemnities that would be losing on exports instead of just paying to the farmers. I just don't know how that they're going to get a handle on this without vaccinating birds. And there's some rumor to there being someplace in a couple of the states and a couple of countries that they were actually going to start vaccinating maybe this summer. Any idea about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for being a poultry technician, right, really critical, and thank you for that work. We've got a number of folks across the state who help us on the testing and the diagnostic side. And I realize that every time I give a response to high-path AI, and I use descriptions of backyards and right, flocks and commercial flocks, one of the, and no surprise to anybody here, that there is this tremendous sort of spectrum of diversity inside poultry, right? From both the fanciers and folks who are that's the business, and it is a business, and it's part of a commercial business, but they're not in distinction to backyard. So to the point, we have talked about, on this high path issue, the most difficult thing that I do is to sign destruction orders, right? It's the most difficult thing because you understand what it is you just did. But it's the response, it's what's going to be required. If you want to deal with high-path AI, you've got to contain and suppress that as quickly as possible. And there's not an easy way to do that, right, when you're talking about poultry. So this conversation of vaccines has really been elevated in the last 3 years or so. To answer the question directly, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has active trials today looking at vaccines, right? And talked to Secretary Vilsack, you're still probably a couple of years away from having a vaccine for U.S. use, at least. Then the question is, policy-wise, do you want to do that? You're absolutely right that the international marketplace is not kind to vaccines. And what international folks have said to us is using a vaccine masks the virus, right? So they don't want to bring it in and then end up with a problem in their respective country, right? So there has to be, we think that there has to be an international agreement on the use of vaccines so that you remove this, well, if you vaccinate, then China won't accept, or Poland won't accept, or Canada won't accept. So we think long term that you've got to get to a better way of managing this high-path avian influenza some other way than destroying the birds. Right? We have spent, just for awareness, the USDA has spent north of $1 billion on high-path AI containment in the last couple of years. Right? 550 flocks across the U.S., 70 million birds roughly have been depopulated as a result of high-path AI. So it's real, right? We've put down 4.5 million in Pennsylvania, so we've got to continue, and we're worried about that. So I appreciate you raising the question that there's both, excuse me, better ways, we hope, long-term to use the science, to recognize that may be the better thing to do to control high-path AI than destruction, right? So that's going to take a lot of work, though, right? I can't do that without the Federal Department of Agriculture being supportive and international trade agreements recognizing that as well. Yeah. But thank you. Thanks for the question.
I'd like to know what we're doing on a state and local level to protect Pennsylvania farmland from the solar industry.
Yeah.
You want to start from the ground up?
Yes, you.
He said the local and state.
So, from our standpoint, it's there, a lot of things are landowner driven. So when a landowner provides a permit for a solar, it's kind of hard for us as a government. We don't really have a way to not approve that. So that's not what you want to hear, but that's kind of, and it's the same thing with, any other industry. If the landowner, as long as it's not illegal, then it's hard to not permit that.
So Mike, legislators can't do much about it, but the Farm Bureau can. And we've already got, I would break the ground and tell you that the Farm Bureau passed for their resolutions. One, those solar farms are any class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4 soils. That's being put forth by our lobbyists at the state level to try to get to PAC and our legislators who are here. And on top of that, they're putting language, already being proposed, to put in language that once a solar farm gets put up, if that solar farm goes defunct and leaves, that they have to create a, for lack of a better word, a slush fund, and they have to come back in and take all that stuff off the property that was put on by them to get money. Now, these guys can't do that, but we can. That's what our job is to advocate for agriculture. And you agree, right? I mean, isn't that how it works? We have to put this forward to our legislature and let them try to do something.
Yes, I think there are tiers to this thing, right? The simple answer is if you want to stop solar, just preserve all the land, because solar is not allowed on it, right? Not a reasonable answer. But to Darrell's point, I mean, what we have said, and we've been working through, as the Commissioner notes, at the end of the day, I mean, I've been shown the exit of rooms that I've said this, right? Because at the end of the day, is a private property rights, right? So inside of this very complicated answer is, you've got to make a decision about your land. There's two ways, if you don't have it preserved, you could zone it, right? Adams County, again, we've gone through a very contentious case in a township that has zoned, restrictions on solar. That is an option, but it'll get you a debate about what to do with it, but that's an option. I think, this is me, Russell Redding, saying this, that we have 58 counties in the state that have adopted a farmland preservation structure that respects classes 1 through 4 soil. You borrow it from the preservation program. If it's good enough to use in the foundation of your preservation program, then borrow it for purposes of guidance about where do you want to put the solar, right? Why not do that, right? So at least you got a clear statement about other classes, and it's not saying no, because I do think the long-term answer is a yes. It's an and not an or. But you've got to be looking at where you can place and where you want to place. You can do that by zoning, you can do it by guidance. So we've looked at this at the state level, tried to figure out what is the appropriate role with the governor and the governor's team to say to local, because by Constitution, remember, we have delegated land use in Pennsylvania by Constitution to local governments, township and counties and local governments. So careful about how we say this, but we also have a farmland preservation program that's built in the framework of a partnership with 58 counties, right? So use the same structure of soil class being your determinant, borrow that for purposes of where you place solar, right? And this county's got, I look at my county all the time, there's a lot of other class soils besides 1 through 4 that are suitable for solar, right? That's my view. So I don't know if that's a great answer or not, but I think at least having in conversation and with the companies who are proponents, we've had this conversation, look at your maps, look at class 1 through 4 soils. Where are they? But that's not where they want to put them necessarily, right? Convenience, and then you've got other determinations about solar, or not solar, but utility line access. But
so is the soil class test, is that in local zoning, county zoning, or how is that?
Yeah, soil classes are universally defined, right? So every soil in every part of the state has a classification, whether it's in a class 1, 2, or 3, 4. Actually, I should ask the agronomist. Yeah, right. That's what an agronomist is. Up to 8. Thank you. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8, or the other classes. Yes.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Secretary.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And we're going to invite Darrell to go back up and finish us off.
Mike, that's an excellent question. I will say to you that I think that one of our problems overall, just as me speaking, is that too often when we go into development, instead of trying to find brownfield areas and areas that are blighted or something like that, we go directly to farmland because that's the easiest place to get. And trust me, one of the main focuses of the Farm Bureau at the state level and at the county level is to advocate for farmers, and this is big on our list. I have so many things I want to talk about. I just want to go back to Rich. Where'd he go? For the last year and a half, we have been working on legislation to help farmers with crop damage. It started way back when, but anyway, to make a long story short, at our October annual meeting at the county level, we were fortunate enough to get 8 resolutions passed at the county level, which we sent to the state, went through a subcommittee, and the subcommittee went to the House, to the annual convention floor, and through a whole year of lobbying, we changed a foundation that was 70-30 against Sunday hunting to a Farm Bureau that is 70-30 for Sunday hunting. Now, that's just one step. All of these things we talk about are very complex, and a lot of things that have to be done. So that's step one. And permitting. We have a permitting thing that is in too, so that if someone crosses a posted sign or purple paint and comes onto your property, it's like coming into your backyard or coming into your kitchen. That's your property. They need permission to come on there. I got to say that we are so fortunate in Fayette County to have Pat Stefano, Ryan Warner, and Charity Krupa, and our county commissioners. You know, a lot of people talk about agriculture and say how important it is, but I'm going to tell you, let's start from our county commissioners. They don't not only talk about agriculture, they put their money where their mouth is. For our ag land preservation program, for the last 5 years, this board of county commissioners has given $100,000 of Act 13 money to the Farmland Preservation Board so that we could preserve farms, and I want to thank you for that. They are doing, they're not talking, they're doing. On top of that, and I'll get into a couple other things. I better get my notes first, I guess. By the way, I picked a bad day to have a battle with my razor, and it won. So anyway, so support. All 3 of our county commissioners are members of the Fayette County Farm Bureau. All of our legislators are members of the Fayette County Farm Bureau. Our senator is a member of the Fayette County Farm Bureau. So you see why we are active as a county satellite of the state. We have the support from our legislators, and that came from a cup of coffee, came from constant conversation. And when the secretary is talking about deer depredation and crop damage, these guys all know all about that. They're one step ahead. Let me share that Senator Rothman's bill is one bill. It includes permitting, not permitting, trespassing and Sunday hunting. And that has had first consideration, which means it was read. And I guess when you guys go back in session, let's hope it gets passed by the end of the year. Representative Mandy Steele from Allegheny County has 2 bills that are about deer crop damage. One of them is just about the trespass laws, and the other one is about Sunday hunting. Sunday hunting is not the solution to this problem. It is a start. We got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things we have to do. If we do happen to get one of the things that the Farm Bureau is asking for is a representative on the Fish and Wildlife Commission and also on the Game Commission, we will slowly see a process of more, how do I want to say this? I mean, more people who are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, helping to formulate the laws and the regulations. Fayette County. So with all this, we're so blessed that we have to work. We can't just sit back and let them do everything. So let's start over here with the FFA. We try to be involved with every facet of agriculture in our county. Some of those jackets that the FFA kids are wearing came from the Fayette County Farm Bureau, who we purchased them. You may not know it, but we just had an Ag Literacy Week where 1,600, Jennifer? How many did we reach? We had readers in all of our local schools, and we, Farm Bureau and 4-H, we partnered with the 4-H, and we've talked to 1,600 children, talking about agriculture, advocating for agriculture. Some of the things that are coming up. Louis Diamond, raise your hand, Louis. Louis Diamond has graciously allowed us to try to get an artificial insemination class for cattle in Fayette County. These things cost $750 to $800. It's a 2-day course. If and when we get this done and it's in the works, you will be certified to do AI. So this is some of the things we're trying to do. Let's see, grassroots. I want to commend the FFA guys. I mean, you're doing a great job, and I'm glad that Adeline has brought them to our regular monthly meetings. We're developing quite a relationship with them. We're working on 4-H as well. Secretary Redding talked about the diagnostic lab coming in the western part of the state. In addition to working on deer crop damage, we have also worked on, Commissioner Dunn made a presentation to our state president, Chris Hoffman. Went well. That I don't know if it got to you, Secretary Redding, but we're trying to attract agricultural businesses into Fayette County. I know you've heard about it. I know you've talked about that. So there are several things in the work. We already have a commitment after the election that we will sit down and talk with our legislators and find out how else we can advocate to bring either a meat slaughtering facility or something else into Fayette County which will generate jobs. Secretary Redding, we have one of your counterparts, Secretary Zimmerman, is going to be coming in on the 17th to train our Ag Land Preservation Board to get more effective at what we're doing. And with the support of the county commissioners, with the money they're giving us, I would say that everybody should consider Ag Land Preservation. It's not for everybody, but it's something that you can look forward to. We have our county picnic on June the 9th. It's going to be at Washington Park. It'll be the 3rd year we're doing that there. We have our farm-to-table dinner. It's going to be on September the 9th. One of the things we do as Fayette County is this will be my wife spent an hour on the phone yesterday with Indiana County, a chef from Indiana County who wants to do a farm-to-table dinner. We are leading the state. I think we're the only one. We're the first one that had a farm-to-table dinner, and now we have already help mentor your county, and we're now working with Indiana County. So we're very progressive. Our legislative tour this year will be on August the 23rd. It's going to be at United Dairy. Listen, I'm very optimistic, but I got to tell you, agriculture, after what Secretary Redding said, if you go back to 2012, every 5 years they have a census. 2012, 2017, 2022. Every successive one was a downturn in the number of farms, number of acres. I mean, and let's look, folks, agriculture and the supply chain is in dire straits. We need to pay attention and wake up. I mean, this is an important issue. We got to eat. So let me close and thank you so much for coming. I mean, it really is great. These events are very important to educate, to share people thoughts and ideas that are going on in agriculture, and help you be a voice to help us in our voice, because we have to raise a voice to talk about how important agriculture is in the state. So if that doesn't make you believe that if you're not a member of the Fayette County Farm Bureau, you should be, I will tell you you should. If nothing else, you need to get on Facebook and follow the Fayette County Farm Bureau Facebook page and see all the things that your local county Farm Bureau is doing. Thank you all for coming. I could go table by table and talk to each one of you. Rich, thanks for your comments. Steve, thanks for your comments. I don't think we can do the same thing we did last time we had one of these things, but great things happen from these meetings. So thank you for coming. Look forward to the next one. Scott, thanks for your partnership. Vince, Dave, thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Oh, last thing. I got one last thing. I have a few of these. This is our 2024 legislative agenda. If you're interested in what your Fayette County Farm Bureau and your State Farm Bureau is doing to try to change laws and try to help you as an agriculturalist, pick one of these up. I'll have them at my table. Thanks, Rob.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that too long?
Thank you all for coming out. And, Steve brought up the avian flu. Last year, he brought it up, and within about 10 days, what we asked for in this meeting was handled. You guys were allowed to have your Fayette County Poultry Association sales here on the grounds here. So I'm hopeful that what you've brought up to Secretary Redding today will garner some attention in Harrisburg. I appreciate you all coming out. We do have a couple of extra minutes. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to give an update. I know I literally didn't ask him, and he's like looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? And so, Pat, that means you're going to be on deck for a very quick update.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I will be very quick. I just quickly want to thank Secretary Redding. One thing that I've learned since I've been in the legislature is that there is a big turnover in secretaries. There are secretaries for many departments. Secretary Redding has been here for 9 years now since I've been in office. He's one of the few secretaries that has been here. He's been very helpful for our county and for agriculture across this Commonwealth. So, Secretary, I do thank you, and thank you for coming back to our county today. We have a great team here. It's been mentioned with the commissioners, the County Farm Bureau. I just want to say thank you. Thank you guys for supporting agriculture. Pennsylvania is #1 in mushroom farming. And I always got to throw a shout out to the lumber guys. #1 for producing hardwood lumber in the entire United States of America. It's our top industry in the state, top in the county. We cannot stress the importance of it. So events like this are crucial for promoting it and pushing us forward to the future, right? So again, I just want to quickly say thank you to everybody. Proud to be here, proud to be part of this team, proud to be part of the agriculture community. So thank you again very much.
Sorry for the 5-second notice, but you know. Senator? Yeah, Senator Pat Stefano.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here so we can have these open discussions. I'll just, I'm not going to repeat everything that my colleague in the House said. But what I do want to echo, and if you heard about it, because Senator Rothman is working on the Sunday hunting bill, and there was an error in the drafting, and I heard a lot about it, so I wanted to echo it to you. There was a change in the dog retrieval, and it was a mistake, and it has been corrected. Because we fought for that 3 years ago, and then it was stripped back out. Then now with the change in the trespass, that if your dog went across into a private property, you were not allowed to retrieve that. And we fought for that 3 years ago. It's back in. It was just a drafting error. And I know a lot of people had their hair on fire about it. And I'm glad they did, because I heard about it, and that's how we fix things. So it did get adjusted, it's fixed. It's out of committee, and it's been read across the desk already, so I imagine it'll be up on third consideration this week coming up. And I'm not sure whether we'll be voting it out on Wednesday or not. I haven't looked at our session notes. That meeting is occurring in a half an hour. So give me an hour and I'll know what we're going to be running next week. But right now, it's up in the air. But I wanted to let you know about that. And if you ever have any questions about legislation, let us know. We'll be glad to get you that information. One thing Pennsylvania does is they're very transparent. So if you ever want to follow a bill, you can find that bill online, tag it, and it will send you alerts when it moves. And I had this argument with someone else from another state where their legislature only was in for 60 days. I said, when those bills move, you can't even see what's happening. In Pennsylvania, we have plenty of time to watch them, and I think that's a real plus. And if you see a bill moving real fast, you want to jump on it right away because something's up. Because we tend to take, government has two speeds, slow and slower. And we take our time to move these things, and when they're moving fast, something's wrong. So keep an eye on it always. You can do that through our offices, or we're online all the time. You can go to our websites, and we'll help you track bills. So again, thank you, Secretary, for being here. One of the top guys in the country for agriculture from the government point of view. So I really appreciate you coming to Fayette County. And Daryl, thank you for the Farm Bureau. And he said, yes, we're our members. I also want to reiterate that I'm a member of the Somerset County Farm Bureau and the Bedford County Farm Bureau. So I'm well connected. Thank you.
But your farm's in Fayette County, right?
I leave the farming schedule.
There you go. There you go. Good for you. Again, Secretary, we can't thank you enough. We appreciate you coming to Fayette County. You're welcome back anytime. The Fayette County Fair is last week of August, last week of July, first week of August. You're welcome to come back. We appreciate you coming in and giving us your insight. And that's it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.